morning, everyone. Today is September 2nd, 2021, and welcome to the New Possibilities Hour, part of the Will Work for Food project, founded by Natalie Armstrong-Motin in the spring of 2020. It's a fundraiser for food banks. There's no charge for these great webinars. Rather, we ask you to contribute to a food bank, either one suggested by our speakers each week or one of your own choice, to help fight the terrible problem of food insecurity all around the world. Every week, one of our favorite parts of the program is when we ask our co-hosts, today Jean Lawler, to tell us our progress. How much money have our generous audiences contributed so far, Jean, to fight food insecurity worldwide?
Hey, Jeff and Natalie and everybody. So good to see you. Our magic number today, we have hit $160,000, 160, that we know of. And, you know, I was thinking about it, depending on which websites Matthew go for. I mean, that's well over 2 million meals. It's just amazing.
Well, that's just incredible, and we're so grateful to our colleagues in the alternative legal communities for being so generous to fight food insecurity. And today, I'm confident we're going to have a presentation so wonderful that will have many, many of you motivated to contribute. So it's a different kind of program today than we've usually presented, and I'm really very excited about hearing what our speakers have to say as we talk about negotiation and deal making from the streets to the boardrooms. Let me introduce Laurie Rose Lubiano to you. Laurie is IP and Product Counsel for the Climate Corporation, San Francisco, California. With a focus in intellectual property and as a registered patent attorney, Laurie has counseled clients, including independent inventors, startups, and public companies, and has supported all levels of management, including the executive suite. As IP and product counsel, Laurie develops and manages the Climate Corporation's worldwide patent portfolio and serves as lead counsel to Climate's product and engineering teams. In addition to IP, her work covers licensing, contract negotiation, open source, data security, privacy, employment law, and international expansion. Laurie has been nationally recognized with a Best Under 40 Award and In-House Counsel Diversity Leadership Award from the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, NAPABA. Outside of work, Laurie is committed to serving the community. She is board secretary for the Medical Board of California. Governor Gavin Newsom reappointed Laurie in 2020 to serve on the board, which protects consumers through the licensing and regulation of physicians and other health professionals. Laurie also holds various leadership roles with the San Francisco La Raza Lawyers Association, Filipino Bar Association of Northern California, Asian American Bar Association of the Greater Bay Area, Hispanic National Bar Association, and the National Filipino American Lawyers Association. So, Laurie, to you and your colleague, Corpuz Jr., we welcome your presentation. Please tell us about the food bank you would encourage us to support, and we eagerly await your words of wisdom. My friends, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. The food bank of our choice is our local food bank, the SF Marin Food Bank. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Jeff, Jean, Natalie, and Sarah for having us. You pulled at our heartstrings, for such a worthy cause, and that's why we're here. And you may be wondering where we're at. We're at the United Playaz Clubhouse in San Francisco, the South of Market area, or SOMA for short. And for those of you who are not familiar with this area was designated a Filipino Cultural Heritage District by the city in 2016, as well as recognized by the state for the rich history and contributions of Filipinos in this area and to our city. So I just wanted to make sure we let people know that.
Nice.
And also, fun fact, this area has special importance to both of us. My family, when they first came here from the Philippines, settled here in 1971, and Rudy's family in 1964. So the history goes back. Before I give my introduction to my good friend here, I thought I'd give you a quick talk about what inspired this talk and this topic specifically. You know, I think when you look at the news, social media articles out there, it's easy to see, you know, how, you know, as a country we're divided, how polarized things are. And I thought, you know, let's shift that perspective and let's talk about the commonalities that we can see in each other. Because when we recognize and focus on the commonalities, it's easier to find connection. And from connection, what flows from connection is trust, loyalty, and ultimately respect. And I think that's what can bring us closer as people.
Amen.
And when Jeff invited me, I was nervous to think that I would be talking for an hour. And so I thought, well, how can I help others shine? How can we give a new or an interesting topic, which made me think of my good friend Rudy right here. And before we jump
I can't hear anything.
Can you hear?
Are you okay? Can you hear us now?
Is anybody talking?
Yeah, we can hear you. Gary, you might need to change your sound or something. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So I'll give a quick introduction of Rudy right here. So Rudy is the founder and executive director.
I am the executive player.
of United,
Please, can somebody talk?
which is a nonprofit here in San Francisco. And this organization is dedicated to youth development and leadership and violence prevention. And you know, anytime you can see Rudy here with the who's who of local, state, and national leadership, A-list celebrities, professional athletes, and that's how I came to know him. Actually, I kept seeing him on TV with the mayor and, you know, Steph Curry and Colin Kaepernick donated money to this organization. I thought, who is this person? And he looks Filipino, by the way. And so I reached out when I was president-elect of the Filipino Bar Association of Northern California. I reached out, and their director of family and community engagement, Misha, who I see is tuned in today, she gave me a tour and welcomed me and my colleague Isabel, and we saw firsthand what they do here and what Rudy and the staff do here, the hard work they do on a daily basis. And one of those things is they physically go to the local schools here. They pick up the children from school and bring them here. And so they have a safe place where they are loved, empowered, and engaged. And I just knew right then, you know, the great work that they do. And you know, he's no stranger to the streets. That's why he is my co-panelist here. And after doing some hard time in the pen, he started his nonprofit career, first starting off as a gang prevention counselor and continuing to do and, you know, dedicate his work to serving the community and, you know, and provide our youth with positive role models. So without further ado, I'll give you Rudy. To me, he's the epitome of grit, dedication, and faith, but I can keep talking, so I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Laurie, for that introduction. Frank and everybody else who's on here, Jeff, everybody who's on here, thank you guys. Peace and blessings. I'm honored and I'm humbled to be here to you know, share my wisdom. And then also to learn, you know, me personally, you know, everything that Laurie says, this ain't nothing new. people been doing this before I've been doing this. I'm just fortunate enough to be chosen, by higher power to do the work that I'm doing. And so, as she said, we're in a 100-year history neighborhood of Filipinos. The Soma, the South of Market, which a lot of people don't know. A lot of Filipino families immigrate here from the Philippines and been here. And my family got here in the mid 60s, right? But I wasn't born into the 70s, but I've been here all my life. And I still currently live here. My kids went to school here. I got my building that we're currently in right now is in the heart of the South of Market. And if you guys don't know San Francisco, this is the #1 place that is being displacement and gentrified in San Francisco. So a gang of Filipinos already got displaced and got moved out, but we're still here. And, when Laurie talks about building relationships, with, the mayor, right? The mayor's from San Francisco, y'all didn't know, right? She's born and raised, she's from the projects. And me being in San Francisco, I knew her prior to that. I know her family, but the mayors prior to that, Mayor Ed Lee, Gavin Newsom, all these dudes, Mayor even Willie Brown, all those dudes, I was able to build relationships with them to help build this community in the South of Market so we could strive. And not only that, but we could be stable in the community where we have 100-year histories and our people will not be pushed out. And so, I'm into building bridges, not walls. I used to hate the police, but now we have some relationship with the police, the chief of police, who's from LA, who's over here now, Chief Scott. He's a good friend of mine. We help get thousands and thousands of guns off these streets of San Francisco to help provide safety for people, period. I'm not against the Second Amendment, but I am against senseless gun violence. And so I'm a survivor of gun violence. 3 blocks up from where we at is the last time where I got shot at and my homeboy got shot. He got hit 5 times. May he rest in peace, right? But anyway, I'm just here to share my wisdom and see how the relationships between us, from the ghetto streets to the executive suites, what is the same relationships? And so thank you, Laurie, for having me. And all you guys.
Thank you. And,
That got me sweating now.
I think I had fun as we were preparing for this talk. And I think the more we talked about this topic, we realized that there are a lot of, similarities, like, the themes of adaptation, of survival, putting in the work, to get what you want, and posturing of some sort, right? When you're on the street. So I think a lot of the people on the call are lawyers, but not all. And lawyers, we like definitions. And so maybe we could start by you telling us from your experience, what does it mean when we say the ghetto street?
So, if you look at the definition of the ghetto streets in a dictionary, it says a small group of people that live in an area where it's poverty, it's poor. That's something like how the definition says in the book. But my definition of the ghetto is people who are resilient, people who are survivors, people who grew up in an area where we, go through so much traumatic stress and disorder, but we survivors. That ain't in no dictionary. That's just surviving 101. Just like you guys probably as lawyers or whatever y'all is, you want to survive the best way you can, wherever you live and where you at. But we have so many landmines where we're at, right? What I mean by landmines is so many, mentally ill, there's so many drugs, there's so much violence, it's all kind of stuff that happens on a daily here. And so to survive through this, right? You have to be resilient and you have to be sharp, because one day you might step on a landmine when you out here.
Thank you for that. And, one commonality that we talked about, or one common experience, is how we both do an assessment of some sort and position ourselves to survive. And so, in the corporate setting, for example, or during a negotiation, or as we meet with our colleagues, and, we find ourselves doing an assessment.
Right.
And some of us may be better at it than others, but, we're reading the room, we're looking at body language, trying to understand what is the temperature in that room, what motivates and drives people. And so let's compare that to survival on the streets. What is assessment like when you're
Right.
on the streets?
So when you say that question, it makes me think about how you just have to survive. Because on the streets, only the strong can survive, right? It's a dog eat dog world out there. And prior to my lifestyle, what I do now as an executive director of United Playaz, which is the violence prevention organization, I used to be involved in gangs. And when the assessment out there on the streets is, one thing that you look at is what people wear. Certain clothing, right? Look, like my hat right here says SF on there, right? Frisco, right? It can mean so many different things when you're on the streets. The posture, when you see people standing in certain places, the dress code, right? Just the mannerism of speaking, who's standing on the sidewalks and who's sitting in their cars. These are all things that you got to look at in order for you to survive. And so they're similar, I believe. You know what I mean? When you guys observe each other, we observe each other too. But I think ours comes to the point where people carry guns and they carry weapons. It's a whole different world because, you know, y'all might communicate and talk and, you know, probably throwing visible darts at each other. But for us out there, the assessments is kind of like more intense because not only you got to look out for the police when you're standing out there, you got to look out for the robbers and the killers.
That's true.
And you can see them, you can tell who is who if you've been out there long enough and know how to survive. And I'm gonna tell you a quick assessment real quick. This happened like probably around 2 weeks ago, right, Laurie? A dude from the corporate world wanted to have lunch with me to find out about our organization. So I was like, all right, let's hook up. We had a date, we had a place to eat, which was down the block off of 6th Street. While we was in a restaurant, y'all been knowing about a lot of the Asian haste that's been going on. We was in an Asian restaurant. And while we was sitting up in the Asian restaurant, there was a lot of people that was in there. It was around 12 o'clock. About 1 o'clock came, we was the last two that was in there, just me and him sitting in the corner. As we're sitting in there, I'm always got my back to the door. Anytime I go to a restaurant or I'm a bar or a club, I always have my back to the door because you never know who's gonna come in, right? That's just a survival 101. So as I'm sitting with my back against the door, the guy who I brought with me, his back against the door, but two dudes walked in. I could tell by their demeanor, what they had on, they was gonna rob the place. The restaurant people didn't know, but I kind of peeped it out. So I started telling the dude who came with me, I was hitting his leg under the table. I said, hey, get ready, they're about to rob this place. But he couldn't understand what I was saying. I was like, the place is about to get robbed. But he kept talking and talking and talking. I'm like, man, the place is about to get robbed. Be aware. And so the two dudes who came in, they started casing the joint. And they said, what kind of food y'all sell here? And the guys who was working there kind of noticed it, who was working there but didn't. And so I had to say something. I said something where they could relate to, like, this ain't the place where you could rob. I was like, they serve Vietnamese food up in here, fool. And they turned around and they looked and they said, hold on. And I kind of like postured, like I put my hand by my jacket. I didn't have no weapon with me. I had to fake like I had some. Like, nah, this ain't the place. And they got it. And I noticed there was another dude standing outside the door, the third dude who was the lookout. And so them two dudes they looked at me, I looked at them, and I kind of like went like this. And when they saw that, it was like, oh man, if we rob this place, it's gonna be a fight. So I think they thought it wasn't worth it. So they just said, all right, we out of here. And they turned around, they left. So I told the dude who was with me, man, you gotta be more aware of your surroundings when you in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? And then I told the people who was there that working, and they noticed too. They was like, I could tell they was gonna rob us. So you know what they told me? Hey, Rudy, anytime you come here now, we're gonna give you a discount.
You know, that, you know, what that reminds me of is, you know, here in San Francisco where, you know, you see these contrasts, you know, well, you know, pre-pandemic, you know, this was the heart of tech.
Right.
And, you know, there's some very wealthy people here, yet you can walk a block or two and find yourself in a very different place.
Absolutely.
And so definitely being aware is important and looking like you have a purpose.
Well, shoot. Right. I mean, even look like, so like even the people when you out there on the streets, they know who to rob or not to rob. It's like the jungle, right? When you got the lions up in there, they see who they gonna attack. They'll get the weak. And so if you're walking around here and you're not paying attention, you're on your phone, or you're walking around and you got something on them like this or something they want, and you look like you're a victim, I promise you, 9 out of 10 times, you might get robbed, or your car might get broken into if you leave your car out here and you got all your stuff just sitting up in there. You hear about all these break-ins, all these cars. And so these are the things when you out here, you have to be very observant at.
Yes.
Just like when you guys deal with the office of sweets. But I don't think y'all be stealing from each other, do y'all? Y'all probably know how to do that on paper.
You know,
I was messing with y'all.
one thing, I thought about as we were talking about assessments is, probably many of you here have done sort of personality assessment. And, quick shout out to my NAPABA LAP fellows, Leadership Advancement Program
That's right.
fellows.
Shouts out to y'all.
That are on the call. And as part of this program, we did what's called the DISC assessment. Just one of the many behavioral and personality assessments out there. And the reason I bring that up is that I use that as a way to assess the people that I may be communicating with at home, at work, knowing how the DISC assessment works. I'll try to do a quick assessment of someone, and tailor my communication to that person that way.
Right.
And actually, it's actually pretty spot on. So I really like DISC. So it's called the DISC, DISC assessment. And actually at work, in the boardroom with some of our executives, like offline, I've profiled them and have asked them, hey, have you ever taken this quiz and or this personality assessment? They've confirmed yes, and they also confirmed their type, which is what I had predicted them to be. So it's just one way what I've tried to do to assess the people that I'm communicating with and how to tailor my communication.
But that's important though, right? In order for you to get along with somebody you're around all the time, you got to have some compatibility.
Yes.
You know what I mean? In order for you guys to function right. Because it's hard working with somebody who you don't get along with.
Yes.
It's like I was talking to Laurie a while back about cellmates. If you got a cellie and you guys are living in the same cell, or even a roommate, right? Or a co-worker in the same office, you got to have some type of, some camaraderie or some type of compatibility to get along. I can't be around somebody, man, I don't like. You know what I mean? That's just it, period. And I got to be straight up. I can't be around you and faking like I like you all this time, but I don't like you. So, you got to find out what the things we like, we don't like. But in a professional state, I understand we have to be professional when we work together.
Yes.
It ain't always about having to like the person when you in a setting, maybe in the corporate world. You got to be with that person or work with that person, and be professional.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, you just say goodbye and leave. Start doing. But hey, I got to introduce you to my cat right here. This is Mama Pootie, y'all. I'm an animal lover too. I got 5 cats in this building. This is Mama Pootie right here. Animals know. If the animals come by you and they run from you, that means you got bad energy.
Gotta fix that.
That's right.
So another commonality that we talked about between our worlds is a presence of a hierarchy and how that affects communication.
Right.
And we find ourselves tailoring our communications based on that hierarchy. So, for example, my communication style with someone in our R&D department, a data scientist or engineer, I will likely have a different style when I speak to them versus when I am communicating with my CEO or executive. So, I asked you if you could talk to the group about the hierarchy on the streets and how that affects communication.
Wow. That's interesting question, because communication and understanding is key to a whole lot of things. Like you just shared how you communicate with certain people in that world. And in the world of the ghetto or the streets, there is a hierarchy. You have people who are on the block. You have people who are behind the scenes, but you would not talk to the person. Although, I mean, it's, it's a survival skill. You would not talk to the person behind the scenes the way you would talk to a person on the street, because the simple fact, it would kill you. It's called respect, or even when you talk to, just say, like a ranking police officer, a guy on the street, a police officer, right? A lot of people often think you have to just talk to them with respect. Nah, you don't, because they don't show respect to people on the streets. So you deal with them accordingly. But when you talk to the chief, you deal with him differently. And y'all know why, right? Because he has the power to get your butt out of jail. You understand what I'm saying? And so on a street level too, with the guys on the streets, they can't make the decision to get you to kill you when you're speaking to them, because they got to go through a protocol. It's hierarchy out there on these streets. And so it's similar to how probably you guys deal with people in a boardroom or in an office. The person who's sitting into you in the office with you, he may get mad and report you, but he can't fire you. If you talk to the boss and you disrespect the boss, guess what? He could fire your butt. So you smart enough to know not to make sure you talk to him, that you talk to the guy who's next to you.
And so, and
Simple.
And so it's very similar rules, right? It's just different accountability.
That's right. And people know that. People are sharp enough to understand and know that, right? You understand that. That's just simple mathematics. That's basic fundamental things. You deal with people differently. Like, I don't deal with my homeboys the way I deal with the mayor. You know what I mean? I talk to her accordingly, the way I would talk to, certain other people when you want to get the respect with the things that you need. So there is a difference. You got to put on different hats, see?
And,
Hey, who's upstairs?
Maybe this is a good time to stop to see, Jeff, do we have any questions that we can address at this time?
Brother Jeff.
Let's see, we have a manageable crowd today. If anybody has a question, please unmute yourself and just ask away. Or post it in the chat if you're more comfortable doing that.
I have a question.
Sure, Danielle, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Hi Rudy. I'm Laurie's mentee. I'm currently a law student, and I'm actually from the Bay Area as well. Daly City, not Soma, but my Lola and Lola landed in, my grandparents landed in the Mission. So can relate to some of the stuff that you're talking about in terms of like our families who came here as part of the diaspora. But I wanted to ask, since we're making comparisons, a lot of the times, companies and corporate settings, and I've worked with Laurie a lot and trying to understand businesses better, as that's the kind of law I want to do in the future. A lot of the times companies have visions and, missions. Can you talk about what the vision and mission is for specifically our Filipino community? You mentioned that there are gangs out there. I'm actually like not as familiar with that, but can you talk about the vision and mission in terms of like what the community could look like? You're putting in all this effort with the mayor, and your leadership is very prominent in this area. So I was just and I know it's not just you alone, right? But I was just wondering if you could kind of talk to that.
So thank you for asking that question. So the United Players motto is, it takes the hood to save the hood. And all that means, it takes the people who have care and love for the people to take care of the people. And so my vision as somebody who's born and raised here and currently still lives here, right, is to buy as much property and land, assets, like this building we're in right here. I own this building. You know what I mean? I used to be somebody who's destroyed this neighborhood, but now I'm a stakeholder. And this building is not owned only by a Filipino now, but I named it after one of my homeboys who's Filipino that worked here that passed away. And so my vision with other organizations in this community, right? You have a lot of different CBOs, community-based organizations, West Bay, you got Soma Filipinas, right? You got so many different that we come together and we try to figure out what's the best way for us to survive in here. So what is the vision? It's to buy land and property, to make sure we get 100% affordable housing. We just opened and broke ground down the block with 203 apartments, 100% affordable housing. 80 of them will go to people who are prioritized in 94103 area code, which is this neighborhood. So we won't displace our people and get them gentrified. And that's what I spoke on when I first got on this, is a lot of our people have been moved out. And so people who are here, how do we continue to thrive and survive in this neighborhood, right? And so that vision is, it's like playing Monopoly. You know what I mean? I used to love to play Monopoly when I was little, is to learn how to buy property and land, because we got, you know, we got action to do that. And then one of the other things too, though, right, D, is safety. That's priority to me, is safety. We can have houses, we can have businesses, we can have residents that live here, but if you're not safe here in the neighborhood where we're at, then don't nobody want to be here. And so that's one of my priorities, is my vision, is to make sure we're safe here and we're stabilized here, and that we own land and property in the community that we're from. That's my vision, and to build up. So if y'all got any people want to help me build up in this building right here, this building got 2 floors, I could build up as high as 8. Holla at your boy.
Let me ask you guys a question. And you have a lot in common, and there are a lot of differences between you two as well. What have you learned from each other? Laurie, what's the most important thing you've learned from Rudy? And Rudy, what's the most important thing you've learned from Laurie?
You go first, because I got to answer. Thank you for answering that, Jeff.
Well, you know, again, I would take it back to what's not different between us, but what we have in common. And, you know, in the beginning, I mentioned some of, you know, what Rudy is to me, you know, and what I see him as. You know, I said the epitome of, you know, dedication and grit and faith. And he inspires me because he is a man of integrity. He does what he says he does. And he's putting in the work. And, you know, we all are running our different races, and we're working hard toward, you know, different goals, leaving a legacy, leaving things better than we left it. So.
Hey, when she talk like that, makes me feel kind of crunchy.
Me too.
Hey, but Jeff, watch this.
Okay.
What we have, even though we come from different sides of the globe, right? And we come from there's so much similarities, like you said, but I'm gonna tell you what makes us the same, is that we both move with the spirit of love. Straight up. I love God. I know she loves God, but I know she does everything from her heart. She cares. Who gonna wake up at 8 o'clock and come talk to all y'all, man, this early? That means she gotta love y'all.
And I am not a morning person.
8 o'clock in the morning, come way down here to the ghetto. Come on, man. So I know what she's doing. She loves it. And I love doing what I do. This ain't no job for me. This is my life. You know what I mean? I was born in this. I wasn't sworn into this. This is what I do. And so, man, it's the spirit of love that we have the same thing that she does. She ain't doing this for no money. You get paid? They give you any food? What they doing? She does it because she cares. And that's the bottom line. Period.
Thank you.
Okay. We have 2 questions in the audience. We have raised hands from Tommy Statkowitz. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and Kat Montez. And Tommy, I believe you had raised your hand first, so please ask away. Unmute yourself, please, Tommy. There we go.
Hey, yo.
Oh, sorry. Actually, Kat was rose her hand first, so I think it's appropriate that she gets.
Oh, did Kat, was it actually Kat?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Kat, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I'm not on video. My name is Kat Montez, and I'm with the City Eats, and Rudy knows who I am. Hi, Uncle Rudy. I have a question. You talk about safety in our neighborhoods in Soma, and thanks to your partnership, I launched our grocery program at SF Mint Hall. So I want to thank you in advance for that. But I wanted to figure out, you know, you talk about safety in the Soma neighborhood, a lot of the Asian hate crimes that are happening. What are you doing with the youth right now that are in your programs to try to uplift them and become, you know, a better human being or a better Asian leader in the community for the younger children that are in your multiple programs?
So first of all, what's happening, Kat? Y'all don't know Kat. She does so much stuff in the community and for people, period. And she's another girl. Right? She's a great mother and a great person, period. You know, shouts out to you, Kat. So just to answer your question, our organization collaborated with West Bay. West Bay is the oldest Filipino organization in the West Coast, right? And the director is phenomenal. It was Carla Laurel, right? We came together. So we got over probably like during the pandemic, the most kids in San Francisco we've been dealing with during the pandemic. So what we're doing though, Kat, is we're educating the kids about those issues. That's all we're doing. We're communicating with them and talking to them and educating them before they get into it and while they're going into it, how to deal with those situations. And to me, education is one of the key ingredients of how to deal with this, because a lot of kids, they already see it, they know it, but how do they deal with it? And so as people who has, I believe we don't have all the answers, but we have some experiences and wisdom know how to deal with it. We share with them. I think that's kind of one of the best ways though, Kat, is we educate them. As young as elementary, we lacing them and sprinkling them as young as elementary. And then, you know, we let them know the consequences. You know, I got, personally, I got 19 staff and 70% of us are ex-felons. And so the dude who just walked off and gave me water, he did 19 years in prison. He went in for murder when he was 16. He got out after doing 19, but he's back over here now working with the middle school kids and talking to them about choices. And they actually, we're in the schools currently as schools ago. They got our staff in the schools, helping out the instructors and the teachers to build that bond. So our organization at West Bay, that's what we're doing. We're teaching all these kids prior to these things going down.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Uncle Rudy.
Welcome, Kat. Keep up the good work, girl. I'll see you at our United Players anniversary. Lock in October the 15th.
Thank you, Kat. Tommy, please, your turn.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your salamat for your time today. I guess my question is kind of going back to the process of mediation. I'm kind of curious, you know, I'm a new mediator myself, so I'm learning a lot of, you know, how to do in-person and Zoom mediations, a lot of it. I've done some in San Francisco, you know, like low-income housing. So I have a little bit of exposure to mediation, but I'm kind of curious how mediation, I imagine it shows up on the streets, how that looks like. And then also because you keep talking about the Filipino community, I'm curious if there are any aspects of that community that show up in the mediation process. So thank you again. Salamat.
Me asking her, or both of us.
Well, you know, thanks for that.
Both of you.
I think that's a good segue. And what I did have a question for Rudy, because knowing that many of you here are mediators and arbitrators, and I thought, you know, that's actually one reason why I pulled him in, you know, to talk with me, because he's mediating conflict all the time. And so maybe you take a quick moment before answering Tommy's question to just share your background in mediation and
Sure.
how that led to United Players being born.
Yeah, so thank you, Brother Tommy, for that question. So just to kind of roll back, before I even started UP in 94, that was 27 years ago, I used to mediate a lot of street stuff because I was involved in the gang, and I was the leader of the gang that was in the South of Market, Downtown Boys. And anytime there'd be conflict, we would come together to try to squash the beef. And so we would communicate. And either sometimes it would turn out good because we would figure out what was the problem. We'll find out what there was a common denominator why we was finna fight. Or it won't go good because you people don't see eye to eye and it gets violent. And we all know the consequences to that, you know, when we talk about it. And so I had some experience in dealing with that because I felt like I was really good. I was like 7 out of 10 when we would negotiate on the street. And so when United Players started, that's how it actually started, was through some violence. And then we had a mediation between different ethnicities that was in the fight. And everybody at the table figured out why they was gonna fight, why the fight happened, right? Because it was a big fight that happened first. Then I was able to get them at the table because a lot of people don't want violence. A lot of people don't want war, period. You know what I mean? And so we was able to sit at the table, right, Tommy, and figure out what the problem was. And once they found out what was the problem, why they was fighting, right? They was like, damn, that's not worth going to prison, or that's not worth dying. And we just brought some common sense to it. And once we figured that out, 27 years later, we use the same concept. It's really just finding out what's the, inside of the onion, what is it? What's the guts of it? And is it really worth it? And so even to last week, I did a mediation with 2 grown ass men, you know what I mean? Who was willing to fight, but we found out what was y'all gonna fight about. And once we found out what it was like, oh man, it ain't even worth it.
Tommy's second part of his question I thought was really interesting about if you see any patterns or themes when it comes to the Filipino community and conflict. And
what do you mean? Our Filipinos, we don't get along, bro. I'm just messing with you. Well, that's a whole different. But I think it goes back to somebody who's neutral. If you go in, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Tommy, but in the Filipino community, we have a lot of inner beef going on within, because a lot of us apply for the same grants, for the same money. A lot of people, personally just don't agree with each other. And so when we have mediations, we get somebody who is not amongst our circle to come in. How do you say that word? It's like more like somebody who's fair. Because you don't want to get somebody from my side to sit in the middle. You might just choose my side. Or somebody who's like, don't know us or who's fair, you know what I mean, Tommy? And then we'll listen to both sides and try to figure out a solution. And I mean, it's about finding a common ground that we can move, because the bottom line is, it's about doing what's right for the people. It's doing what's right for our community at the end of the day. We ain't got to like each other, but at the same time, we got to figure out a solution for what's best for the bigger picture and the goal for our community and our people here.
So Rudy, tell us a little more about what a mediation in your context looks like, because in the context of lawsuits and, guys who wear neckties like me, everybody comes to a high-rise building in the financial district and sits around a table in a conference room. What does it look like in your world? How do you convene it? How do you get people to come together? And how do you conduct a mediation?
So first, hopefully I answered your question, Tommy, right? Hope I answered some of it, because I don't know everything. I only know what I know. But get it back. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. A great deal of it was answered.
Right on, man. So Jeff, this is the thing about it. It goes back to the hierarchy. In order for you to get the other side to come to the table, you have to get the person who makes the decisions and call to say, hey, man, I need to get your people at the table. And if you guys are willing to meet at the table, because this is bad for business. Just say, like, if her gang and my gang is funking, right, and there's violence, ain't nobody going to come to the neighborhood where we're at, where people are selling drugs, because there's shootings, there's robbings, and there's killings. And so they got to feel comfortable enough, because now it's slowing down our business to make money. And so what we would do is we'll go to the hierarchy and say, hey, we got to find a solution. And we will find a place, a location that nobody knows, that they feel safe and they're comfortable, right? Where we could sit down and figure out how we could live together without nobody getting killed. And it happens all the time. And I'm going to tell you, I ain't even going to tell you one secret, that other secret. I'll share that with Laurie later. But
tell us a little secret.
It has to do with medicine. Now, I mean, it's legal now, shit. I'm gonna tell y'all. So usually on the streets now, excuse me for my language, I didn't mean to cuss.
It's okay.
Right? Works for the streets. And this ain't nothing new. It's been happening way back in time. Like I said before, this ain't nothing new that we're doing. The Native Americans would smoke the peace pipe. And when they would sit down, guess what? They'll come with a lot of agreements because they had peace with each other. And so on the streets, the way I stopped a lot of violence is both sides, they would smoke some weed before they meet. And when they sit down, they usually come up with a resolution. I ain't lying.
You know what's interesting?
So maybe some of y'all should smoke some weed when y'all meet, before y'all meet. Just don't drink no alcohol, because alcohol make you violent. Especially that Hennessy.
In preparation for this talk, you know,
For the record, is water.
I spoke, you know, I checked in with my friends who are arbitrators and mediators, and I was surprised to learn that when you do a mediation, that both parties aren't in the room at the same time. I just thought it was that way. So, but you know, I guess it's separate. You know.
No, but I've been through a lawsuit too with the police, because the police, you know, did me wrong. This is way back. This is police in Sacramento. And so when we had the mediation, I noticed the cop wasn't in the room.
Mm-hmm.
They had his lawyer in the room. And I thought that was odd. You know what I mean? But for us, it has to be up front. You have to see who you're dealing with, because it's about your word on the streets. Your word means the most. So I got to hear you and see you and look at you for you to say, all right, we squash this. Let's shake hands. We'll let it go. That's from us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But the corporate world, I noticed y'all sign a piece of paper. You know how they say the pen is more mighty than the sword? That's real talk. Y'all sign, because if you break that contract and agreement, they sue your butt and you lose all your money.
You know, one question I had for you, you know, as we're talking about mediation, and you know, I wanted to know, how do you encourage and help someone feel more comfortable in that situation so they will show their true selves?
Yeah. So I mean, just for me, the person has to be authentic. The person has to be real, and they got to know that you're fair with me. And I guess you built that through sitting down and getting to know that person. You just can't sit down. I don't, me personally, I just can't sit down with somebody when it comes to somebody's life and trust them with my life. It has to be built on trust. It has to build on authenticness and, you know, being real. That's the way I see it.
And Rudy, is that built on your past relationship with the people with whom you're involved, or do you have to establish that authenticity and legitimacy instantly?
No. So Jeff, it has to be built over time. It is a reputation. So people know that the work that I do now is real. I've been doing it for 27 years. From 1997, I wasn't sure if I was going to be into this lifestyle. It took me at least 3 years to say, you know what, I got to make a commitment to being honest and have integrity to do this job. Because I was Dr. Jekyll and Moan and Mr. Rob Your Ass at Night before, from 94 to 97, even though I was doing this work. And then I had my first son in 97, and I caught my last case in 97. And I'm like, I cannot continue to do this, because I felt bad in my spirit, like I was a hypocrite. You dig what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So from 97 on, I moved forward. Don't mean people changed in my path, because, you know, I was still getting jacked by the police. You know, they was raiding my house still and all that. But I know I was honest, and the people knew that. And so in time, the people on the streets knew they can count on me being real, because they seen that I stuck with it consistently.
And then, Rudy, when in your context, when you're mediating and trying to help people resolve conflict, one of the things we talk about in our world of business and commercial cases is how much the mediator ought to be telling people or directing people what to do, as opposed to allowing them to generate their own ideas and solutions. Do you find that same tension in your work helping to resolve conflict? And how do you deal with that when you feel an impulse to tell people, oh, I got the answer for you? Do you do it? You restrain yourself?
So I got it. What do you think?
I think it's probably, it depends on the situation, you know, who you're dealing with, because, you know, if you've seen it before, you know, you've seen that scenario before, that wisdom that you bring, I think they would appreciate that and respect that and take that in to help them come to a solution.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I asked, because I knew you would say what you said. Because I feel the same way. You know what you want, right? And if you don't know what you want, let us guide you to that, right? Because most of the time, some people, they really don't know what they want. And so, kind of like, like you were saying, share with them what you think would be best. Just make suggestions. I don't say this is what you should do or this is what you should want. I'll make a suggestion. And hopefully, you know, you take consideration and think about it and weigh it out before you make a commitment to it. You know what I mean?
So what works for you? How would you phrase it? Let's get real practical about it. How would you phrase it in a way that is sharing your wisdom without seeming to be bossing people around or ordering people to do things?
I think, Jeff, you just answered your question. You just answered it by saying, you know, this is from my experience and from what I know, this is what I think. That's what I would say. This is what I think would probably be best for the situation. But you got to make the decision. But this is what I put on the table and think that would be best for you.
And, you know, I think we talked a little bit about this during our prep for this, but, you know, I think sometimes it's about a perspective shift and keeping the parties focused towards that goal and explaining to them that perhaps it's not about win-win, but it's about fair.
Right.
And, you know, the word compromise, you know, just by definition, someone is not getting everything they want.
But also going back to Johnny's question, right? To what's best for the bigger picture at the end. You dig what I'm saying? What overall would be best for everybody?
Looks like Danielle has another question. Danielle, please.
Thank you. So one of the things I've noticed.
City.
What's up?
Danielle from Daly City.
Well, I'm in LA right now, but yes, I will be home tomorrow over the Labor Day weekend. But yeah, Daly City, technically South City, but that's okay. We'll go with Daly City.
Hey, 415 right here on mine.
650, man. Sorry.
I just see right there. We me and her did some banging on each other. Banging. Thank you for following up.
Yeah, no, I just had a question because a lot of the times, you know, in the legal world, for example, retention of like diverse associates, especially like with the younger generations, can be difficult because, you know, there's just a lot of issues surrounding diversity, for example, but also just the work-life balance, for example, within the industry itself. So, and I also run a nonprofit program on a national level. And one of the issues that we see, and this is specific to Filipino Americans, right? Like there's this huge intergenerational gap as well in working with our elders, so to speak. And you look like, I perceive and assume you, especially because you're friends with Laurie, like to be able to build that relationship specifically with the youth. You touched on it a little bit in terms of like education, but what advice would you give, you know, whether it's like nonprofit organizations or corporate setting or corporate world, people in the corporate world, like what advice would you give them in terms of like connecting with this new and up and coming generation and, you know, getting them motivated to do things like, you know, staying at their jobs, enjoying their jobs, you know, as well as like being involved with the community? How would you, can you speak to that connection that you have with the generations like coming after you?
So I just want to make sure I get this question right. Can you break that down to me a little more?
Yeah, like some of there's a lot of issues, especially like, you know, from my perspective, I see in the corporate world with law, as well as with our own Filipino American communities, like in the nonprofit and community organizing space, where there's a gap between the generations before us and us, right, as youth. So what advice would you give to either side really about how we can bridge that gap and get a little bit more aligned in terms of understanding? Because the problem is, if there's no connection there, then we lose out on a lot of the leaders, you know, whether it's corporate or nonprofit in the future. So what advice could you speak to?
I don't know if I mean, this is just my answer, and I deal with it a lot. To me, it's about knowing your history and learning it and education, and talking to the new generation more about, you know, our history and how we came from and where we came from, because I believe a lot of us lost our culture. A lot of us are misguided, right? They're not lost, they're just misguided. And you know, the school system didn't teach our kids who are younger about how powerful and how amazing our kings and queens come from our culture. And I think we have to educate them on that and not forget about the traditions of our Filipino people. And I think hopefully that would change them. And then from the other perspective, from people who are a little older, understand the new generation that's coming up. And I think sometimes we have to learn how to balance that out. You know, if you see kids now, like if you watch now, you be in a house or you in your car, everybody's on their phones. You on your phone, your kids on your phone, everybody's on their phone, but nobody's communicating to one another. But if you realize they're all looking at the same thing in the same room, in the same car, and all it takes is everybody to put their phone down and communicate and educate each other. So I think going back to some of the old traditional ways that we know that works, it's always going to be something that's beneficial. And that's why I said what I said. We're not doing nothing that's new. I'm not doing nothing that's new. I'm only following what people did for me and sacrificed their life from the I Hotel all the way down. You understand what I'm saying? And so I think it's important that we educate and we communicate with our kids, just like we do when we do mediation. We have, you know, how our parents used to sit us down and talk to us. Find time to make it happen. And I mean, I'll be the first one to say I need to work on that.
I know we only have a few minutes left, so instead of going, I had other
It's
questions.
already an hour? I'm just
Yeah.
getting started.
We can open it up to questions, any more questions, but also just a friendly reminder to, if you're able to make a donation to the SF Marine Food Bank, but also if you like what you hear, to please donate to United Playaz as well.
And let me say this, hey Jeff, and to all y'all support the food bank, United Playaz in the West Bay during the pandemic, and a lot of different Filipino organizations, right? We all came together during the pandemic and fed thousands of families through the San Francisco Marine Food Bank. And there was a lady who worked there, her name was Isabella Flores, who was the lead from the San Francisco Food Bank that helped us out in this community that fed thousands of families. So I just want to say, man, respect to you guys for doing what y'all doing.
What a tremendous presentation. We have just a minute or two left. Rudy, thank you so much. Laurie, thank you so much. And I'd like to amplify what Laurie just said. Rudy, if we want to support United Playaz as well, please tell us, how do we do that?
Or just call me. Shoot. 415-716-4100. That's this phone right here. Call me. Our actual 27-year anniversary, Jeff, is coming up next month. I would like to invite all you guys. 415-716-4100.
And if we want to, do you take contributions online, by mail? How do we support your organization, Rudy?
Yeah, I mean online too, unitedplayaz.org. We got our website, spelled Playaz. We go on there, you can learn more about us. If you want to come down and see what we do, right, call me. I'll make sure you guys get a first-hand view. We can take a walk around the neighborhood, see our center. And I just want to say before anything, big shouts out to Laurie right here, who made this happen. She's amazing. She's magnificent. This lady right here, man, she's a warrior for our people. You know what I mean? And so I just want to give you respect, girl.
Well, thank you so much. I think everybody on the line here and people who will be watching the recording of this online will agree 100% what both of you are doing to prevent violence, bring peace to our communities, and improve life in San Francisco Bay Area and beyond is just wonderful. Thank you so much for being our guests today. Support the San Francisco Marine Food Bank, please. Support United Playaz. Let me ask Jean or Natalie, any final comments, please?
Rudy and Laurie, thank you so much for speaking to us today. The authenticity with which you spoke about communication and commonalities really touched a lot of people. And in fact, enough people on just this live event have donated money to provide 6,000 meals to the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. So thank you, everyone.
Praise God. It's all God's work, y'all. Communication and understanding is key.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an incredible pleasure. San Francisco is the place of my birth, actually, at the Presidio, when there was still a hospital there. And my family goes way back. I love it. The Presidio Letterman Hospital, yeah.
Born at.
Letterman Hospital.
That's where I was born.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Your father was in the military? Or
Right.
yeah, there you go. Anyway, I love the saying that you have behind you. You talked about it when we first got on the call or on the Zoom. Blessed are the peacemakers, right? So they shall be called children of God, right? Yeah, the Beatitudes. That's great. What a great thing.
Great. Laurie, Rudy, Jean, Natalie, Sarah, everybody here, thank you so much for an extraordinary experience this morning. With that, we are complete.
Have a good Thursday, you guys.
Thank you. You want to